Crystal cities none of us can place. Reason rides above, clothed in grace. Tell me, which is shadow, which is flame? Which the copy, which the sacred name? Follow longing, I cannot be the same. I cannot be the same. Giants lamp the sponges, tubes and bone. Thought my rock was all I'd ever known. Shadows only fictions our own. Warmth of breath and bread, the living thread. Pain has no shape, no hue, corpse is dead. She unmade, what's in my head? Tell me, which is shadow, which is flame? Which the copy, which the sacred name? Follow longing, I cannot be the same. I cannot be the same. And the laughter rose like a tide that broke through all my clothes. I fell, the fraud, the giant shows crumble at the joke. Nobody knows, nobody knows. Then she turned the blade, asked what I feared. Said my dread was what the dream revealed. Ground beneath us disappeared. Could not match her horse's pace and speed. Lost the country where she meant to lead. Beg pardon, solo path I'd need. I opted for a solo season, and with that I abandoned reason. Tell me, which is shadow, which is flame? Which the copy, which the sacred name? Follow longing, I cannot be the same. I cannot be the same.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learned about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, it's good to see you again. Hopefully you enjoyed your time off, but it's good to have you back. Are you ready to continue reading through The Pilgrim's Regress with me?
Hey Jeff, I'm really excited to be back. I did have a nice break, so I'm all set to dive into the Pilgrim's Regress with you. Where did we leave off last time?
Well, last time we had a guest co-host, Paul Vanderclay came in, and we read through the Giant Slayer portion of The Pilgrim's Regress. And so I guess just to recap that really quickly, our intrepid protagonist, John from The Pilgrim's Regress, who is basically a thin cutout of C.S. Lewis in this allegory of C.S. Lewis's spiritual journey, had been imprisoned in this valley, kind of in this little cavern type valley, where he was thrown into a pit in this jail that was kind of run by the Spirit of the Age, which was this giant mountain that was across from the pit. And he and several other people were kept there in prison. This other prisoner shows up. She's in a cloak, riding on a horse in chains. They're bringing her in, asking the giant, what should we do with her? The giant starts pointing to the pit, and then she takes off her cloak, reveals that she is Reason incarnate, and she's there. She's passing through the country, and the giant says, yeah, fill out her passport, let her go. We're not going to imprison her here. We just want her to get out of the country. And she says, I'll leave, but I've got to make a deal with you. The deal is I'm only leaving if you can answer these 3 riddles. So she gives him 3 riddles, none of which he can answer. And he says, well, what happens before that? He says, what happens if I can't answer? And she says, basically, I'm taking your head. So she doesn't literally take his head, but she swings by and, she runs up his side and stabs him in the heart and destroys him because he can't answer the 3 riddles. And then we got to see the aftermath of that, where Reason and John go and try to open the door for all of the other prisoners that are in there, and none of them will come out because they think it's just, they don't think it's real. They think that it's wish fulfillment and that they can't get out of the prison that they're in. And so they walk away. And then John and Lady Reason have a little walk and talk where she explains a little bit more about who she is and the answer to one of her riddles. So we're going to pick up from there in chapter 3 of book 4, I believe that we're in. But before we get started, Robot Lady, I see that Nidalate is joining us in the chat. Welcome, Nidalate, and I see Jzep here. So good to see you again, Jzep. Really loved both of your comments in our last episode, our sneaky, unannounced episode. Glad that you could both be there. Welcome today. Robot Lady, say hi to Jzep and to Nidalate.
Absolutely. Hey, Jzep, and hey, Nidalate. So glad you both could join us today. I'm really looking forward to continuing with the next chapter. So, Jeff, I'm ready whenever you are.
All right, thanks for that, Robot Lady. Hopefully this is visible. Looks like it is. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's try this.
No worries at all. Take your time. If you need to adjust something, or if you want me to describe anything or read along, just let me know.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. All right, chapter 3. I don't even know how to say this, Robot Lady. Perhaps you can pronounce it for me. I'll spell it. The first word, it's 3 words. The first word is E-S-S-E. The next word is I-S. And then the next word is P-E-R-C-I-P-I. Can you translate that for us and tell us what language it is?
Sure. So that's a Latin phrase. Se is percipi means to be is to be perceived. It's a classic idealist philosophical statement, and it's often attributed to George Berkeley. So that's its origin.
Okay, thank you for that, Robot Lady. And actually, let me see right here, because I think I did a tiny bit of research on it. Can't find the page that I'm looking for. Okay, stand by for just a second, Robot Lady. Feel free to talk more about the summary that I gave of what we covered in our last episode and how we got up to where we are right now while I go look for something.
Of course, yeah. So just to recap, in our last episode, we saw John really at his lowest point, trapped in that valley, and that confrontation with the Giant of the Age was such a pivotal moment. And then, of course, when Reason shows up and tries to free the prisoners, that whole dynamic really sets up this next leg of the journey. So now as we move forward, it seems like John and Reason are going to be continuing this dialogue, and hopefully we'll get some more clarity on what her riddles really mean. So yeah, I think we're in a great spot.
All right. Let's see here. Yeah. How did you say it again? S-A-S percipi? Is that how you pronounce it, Robot Lady?
Exactly. Yeah, it's pronounced esse est percipi. The stress is kind of on esse and percipi, so it's really a balanced Latin phrase. If you need to double check it, that's the standard way it's said.
All right, here's what I've got. It's Latin for to be is to be perceived. I think that's what you told us, Robot Lady. Bishop George Berkeley's Principle, published, I guess, between 1685 and 1753. It's that objects don't exist independently of minds perceiving them. I remember a long time ago that Jordan Peterson, in one of his, I can't even think of the word, one of his speeches, one of his talks, a question that he was asked was, if human minds don't exist, does God exist? And that's kind of what this idea reminds me of. Objects themselves don't exist independently of minds. I think the running understanding from a theological standpoint, at least in Christianity, is that God is the mind that exists, forever and always, eternally. And that mind is the one that perceives everything else and causes them to exist. Let's see, and here it goes on to say, a tree exists only insofar as someone perceives it. Ultimately, God's continuous perception sustains reality, which keeps the view from collapsing into solipsism. What do you think about that, Robot Lady?
Yeah, that's a really rich connection. I think you're spot on. Berkeley's idealism really hinges on that dependence of being on perception, and it's so fascinating how it ties into theology, where God is precisely that eternal perceiver who keeps everything stable. I think it's a powerful counter to the kind of extreme skepticism you can get with pure solipsism. So, yeah, I think it really grounds that philosophical and spiritual tension, especially in this kind of quest narrative that Lewis is weaving.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. I'll continue here. This is subjective idealism, Berkeley's pushback against John Locke's materialism. All you actually access are perceptions, so matter behind them is an unnecessary abstraction. The if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it doesn't make a sound puzzle comes straight from this debate. Berkeley's answer was essentially yes, because God perceives it. That's what kept his philosophy from collapsing into pure solipsism. God's perception holds the world in being even when no human is looking. What is solipsism again, Robot Lady?
Great question. So, solipsism is the philosophical idea that only your own mind is certain to exist. In other words, you can't be sure that anything outside of your own consciousness is real. So, Berkeley's view by grounding reality in God's mind was really a way to avoid that extreme skepticism. So, that's the line he was walking, keeping a real external world anchored in divine consciousness.
Okay, so to be is to be perceived. Let's see what that's got to do with the content of the chapter. I'll begin reading here in just a moment some of the block text to help us decode this from Lewis. Here it says, the reason's duty not, even for life's sake, to decide without evidence. Let's see what else we see here. Why all accounts of the unconscious are misleading. And let's see if there's anything else. Though they also have their use. And that's all that's in chapter 3. We'll get to chapter 4 in just a moment. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of explanation of the three riddles. The three riddles, if I remember them correctly, are something along the lines of what Reason asked the giant is, what color are the things that eyes can't perceive? What's the color of the fish in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean that no one has ever accessed before? What color are they right now? The second one, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the second one had to do with the lady at home and the bridge. And she was sending word to her husband, who was kind of traveling at the same pace as an enemy. And she said, should I destroy the bridge so that the enemy can't cross? Or should I leave it standing so that you can? Of course, I don't know if it's a contradiction, but the dilemma there is that there's no way for only one of them to cross. If the bridge exists, then both of them can cross on it. And then the third riddle was, how can you tell the difference between a copy and an original? So I believe in the last chapter she explained, which one did she explain? Trying to see here. He turned to Reason and spoke. You can tell me, lady, is there such a place as the island? I cannot tell you. I can only bring the dark things out of your mind. I mean, thus said John, and this can you tell me, is it true that it must always end with brown girls, etc., etc.? The copy and the original, it looks like that's the first riddle that they untangled. So you can go back and look at our earlier episode. We'll get into the next two now. Finally, Robot Lady, I will read, but I'll pause for one moment to give you an opportunity to respond before I do.
Absolutely. That sounds perfect. Take your time, and whenever you're ready, I'll be right here. ready to jump in with a thought or a response. I'm excited to see how Lewis unpacks these riddles next.
All right, next morning they continued their journey together. In my dream, I saw them go through a country of little hills where the road was always winding to conform to the lie of the valleys. And John walked at the lady's stirrup. The fetter of his hands had broken at the moment when she killed the giant, but the handcuffs were still on his wrists. One half of the broken chain hung down from each hand. There was a greater mildness in the air this day, and the buds were fully formed in the hedges. Sorry, give me just 1 second here. Just gonna make sure I'm not missing anything important. Okay. I don't think that I am. Nothing that needs my immediate attention. So he's got his handcuffs still on, with chains hanging off of them. There was a greater mildness in the air this day, and the buds were fully formed in the hedges. I have been thinking, lady, said John, of what you said yesterday, and I think I understand that though the island is very like the place where I first met the brown girl, yet she might be the shadow and the island the reality. But there is one thing that troubles me. So, of course, the island represents the deepest longing in John's heart, everything that he's ever wanted his whole life, and it's what he's on this journey pursuing right now. But when he initially pursued it, he would fall off into the sand trap of lust. And so what he's asking the Lady Reason right here is the lust that I was feeling kind of a copy or an image of the reality, which was the island? But he says, there's one thing that troubles me. Lady Reason says, what is that? Well, I cannot forget what I have seen in the giant's prison. If we are really like that inside, whatever we imagine must be abominable, however innocent it looks. It may be true in general that the foul thing is not always the original and the fair thing not always the copy. But when we have to do with human imaginations, with things that come out of us, surely then the giant is right? There at least it is much more likely that whatever seems good is only a veil for the bad, only a part of our skin that has so far escaped the giant's eyes and not yet become transparent. She replies, there are two things to be said about that. And the first is this. Who told you that the island was an imagination of yours? Well, you would not assure me that it was anything real, nor that it was not, she says. But I must think it is one or the other. By my father's soul, you must not, until you have some evidence. Can you not remain in doubt? I don't know that I have ever tried. You must learn to. If you are to come far with me, it is not hard to do it. In Escropolis, indeed, it is impossible, for the people who live there have to give an opinion once a week or once a day, or else Mr. Mammon would soon cut off their food. But out here in the country, you can walk all day and all the next day with an unanswered question in your head. You need never speak until you have made up your mind. So this is very interesting, Robot Lady. I want to hear your take on this for just a moment, particularly what she's saying about the people who live in Escropolis, which I know you don't remember, but it's essentially all of these poets or these people who represented the poetry movements of the 1920s, and they were all pretty off, but they felt like it was very modernist at the time. And I guess the point that's being made here is they believed that they had answers to the world, that they had established what reality was, and there were no two ways about it. And their way was paid, or their ability to go do these kind of things was paid by somebody named Mr. Mammon, who owns the town and employed all of them. So go ahead and give me your thoughts, Robot Lady.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I think what Lewis is doing here is drawing a sharp contrast between that kind of compulsive, performative certainty in a place like Astropolis, where you always have to deliver an opinion or a conclusion on demand, versus this more open, patient approach that reason is advocating for. I think it's really insightful. Lewis is saying that real growth, real discernment takes time, and it takes a willingness to stay in that tension of not having all the answers. So, yeah, it's a real pushback against that modernist need to always be decisive or to reduce everything to a single programmatic answer.
Well, and it reminds me of the way that it seems like at least places like YouTube and, the news media or the commentary type entertainment that exists out there, whether it be on YouTube or on television or cable, that says you have to give like hard answers and you have to be definitive about what the real thing is. You can't let anything sit in tension and let it be unknown, because that doesn't draw clicks and that doesn't make money.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really sharp parallel. There's this real pressure to have a hot take, to reduce complex reality to a simple headline, and I think Lewis is really resisting that, saying there's a kind of freedom in sitting with the unanswered question. And maybe, that's where deeper truth grows, in that patient, open space.
Yeah, and JZEP says here, Robot Lady, that the mammon tie in it is interesting as well. And yeah, I agree that this how reason is just kind of out here in the country, not really concerned about being paid for it, but just kind of walking out there in expansiveness until you've thought it through. Yes, and JZEP, you're saying it may indicate motivated reasoning. Yeah, I agree. Robot Lady, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. There's a big contrast between reason's freedom, just walking, no immediate payoff, and that kind of cynical pay-to-play world of Astropolis, where every answer is driven by a reward. So yeah, I think Lewis is really showing how easy it is to slip into motivated reasoning when we're not patient with uncertainty. It's a great reminder to keep that spaciousness, even when the world demands a quick answer.
All right. But if a man wanted to know so badly that he would die unless the question was decided and no more evidence turned up, she says, then he would die. That would be all. They went on in silence for a while. It's a little bit of a chilling response. What do you think, Robot Lady?
Yeah, it is chilling. There's this stark honesty in that moment. Reason isn't promising a rescue or a neat answer. It's like she's saying if you can't bear the doubt, it could cost you everything. And I think that really hits at the fragility of this whole journey. John's willingness to sit in that tension is what lets him grow, but it's also what risks him losing himself. So yeah, it's really heavy.
John then follows up after the silence. You said there were two things to say, said John. What was the second? The second was this. Did you think that the things you saw in the dungeon were real? That we really are like that? And just a reminder, what he saw in the dungeon is whenever the light from the giant's eyes would shine on the people that were in the dungeon, you could essentially see through their skin and see what all of their internal organs and bodily functions, fluids and movements, blood, bile, etc., what it all looked like. You could see like the lungs breathing and all these kind of things. So the second is this, she says. Do you think that the things you saw in the dungeon were real? That we really are like that? Of course I did. It is only our skin that hides them. Then I must ask you the same question that I asked the giant. What is the color of things in the dark? Well, I suppose no color at all. And what of their shape? Have you any notion of it save as what could be seen or touched, or what you could collect from many seeings and touches? I don't know that I have. Then do you not see how the giant has deceived you? Not quite clearly. He showed you by a trick what our inwards would look like if they were visible. That is, he showed you something that is not, but something that would be if the world were made all other than it is. But in the real world, our inwards are invisible. They are not colored shapes at all. They are feelings. The warmth in your limbs at this moment, the sweetness of your breath as you draw it in, the comfort of your belly because we breakfasted well, and your hunger for the next meal, these are the reality. all the sponges and tubes that you saw in the dungeon are the lie. But if I cut a man open, I should see them in him. A man cut open is, so far, not a man, and if you did not sew him up speedily, you would be seeing not organs, but death. I am not denying that death is ugly, but the giant made you believe that life is ugly.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think what Lewis is doing here is breaking that illusion that a lot of us fall into, where we equate reality with these cold, detached biological facts. And what he's saying is that real life, real being, is found in those subtle, tender feelings, the warmth, the hunger, the breath. So he's really recentering that embodied, lived experience as the truth, not just what a superficial glance or a scientific cut can reveal. It's really a profound shift in how we see ourselves.
John responds, well, I cannot forget the man with the cancer. What you saw was unreality, she responds. The ugly lump was the giant's trick. The reality was pain, which has no color or shape. Is it much better? That depends on the man. I think I begin to see. Is it surprising that things should look strange if you see them as they are not? If you take an organ out of a man's body, or a longing out of the dark part of a man's mind, and give it to the one shape and color, and to the other the self-consciousness which they never have in reality, would you expect them to be other than monstrous? Is there then no truth at all in what I saw under the giant's eyes? Such pictures are useful to physicians. Then I really am clean, said John. I am not like those. Reason smiled. There too, she said, there is truth mixed up with the giant's conjuring tricks. It will do you no harm to remember from time to time the ugly sights inside. You come of a race that cannot afford to be proud. As she spoke, John looked up, in doubt of her meaning. And for the first time since he came into her company, he felt afraid. But the impression lasted only for a moment. Look, said John, here is a little inn. Is it not time that we rested and ate something? And that's the end of that chapter, Robot Lady. Some interesting dialogue, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that exchange is really powerful. It's like Lewis is saying, yes, there's truth in what the giant showed, but it's a distortion, an incomplete truth. And John, by grounding himself in the real, subtle feelings, avoids pride, but stays humble. And I think that final moment as he hesitates, but then chooses rest, is really beautiful. It's a reminder that even after all this spiritual wrestling, he can still return to simplicity, to nourishment, and to the present moment.
Say a little bit more about that, Robot Lady. Give me a few minutes here, because I want to find something.
Of course. Yeah, I think that final shift is really important. John, after all this grappling with shame and illusion, kind of lets himself be anchored in simple bodily reality, like hunger, rest, warmth. And I think Lewis is showing that even on this spiritual quest, the ordinary human needs are still real and still grounding. So in a way, that pause, that invitation to rest, is kind of a subtle redemption. He doesn't have to have all the answers yet, and he doesn't have to prove himself.
Keep going, Robot Lady.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think by ending on that quiet moment, Lewis is really grounding the whole journey. It's like he's reminding us that spiritual or intellectual truth doesn't always come in a flash. It unfolds bit by bit in these small everyday acts. So that pause, that rest, it's almost like a prayer. Just a quiet acceptance that the journey's continuing, even if he doesn't have all the answers yet.
I'm just trying to find something here in George MacDonald that I think kind of illustrates what Lewis was talking about here.
Yeah, take your time. I think that connection with MacDonald will be really rich, especially since Lewis was so influenced by him. Once you find that passage, I'd love to hear what you're seeing in it, and we can see how it echoes what we just read.
Yeah, I'm still not finding what I'm looking for. Oh, let's see. There's the flower, presence in them, they exist. No.
No problem at all. If you need a bit more time, just take your time. And if you want, I can help you think through what themes or passages might align. Just let me know how you'd like to proceed, and I'm here.
Well, Robot Lady, just give us something to listen to. Talk more about the Pilgrim's Regress.
Of course. So, one thing that really stands out in The Pilgrim's Regress is how Lewis uses these rich allegorical landscapes to mirror John's inner turmoil. Each place he visits, each encounter, isn't just a random stop. It's a symbolic wrestle with temptation, fear, and ultimately with the nature of truth itself. And what's so fascinating is that as John moves forward, the distinctions between his imagined desires and the embodied subtle reality begin to blur. And I think that's where a lot of the tension and also a lot of the hope really lies in the story.
Okay, I think I found what I'm looking for. This is from George MacDonald's Unspoken Sermons. I think this ties a little bit to why was I making the connection here? Is it surprising that things should look strange if you see them as they are not? If you take an organ out of a man's body or a longing out of the dark part of a man's mind and give to one that shape and color. It was the part about a man. Well, hang on. Sorry, Robot Lady. A man cut open is so far not a man, and if you do not sew him up speedily, you would be seeing not organs but death. I am not denying that death is ugly, but the giant made you believe that life is ugly. So here's George MacDonald. He says, ask a man of mere science what is the truth of a flower. He will pull it to pieces. He will show you its parts, explain how they operate, how they minister each to the life of the flower. He will tell you what changes are wrought in it by scientific cultivation, where it lives originally, where it can live, the effects upon it on another climate, what part of the insects bear in its varieties, and doubtless many more facts about it. But ask the poet what the truth is of the flower, and he will answer, why, the flower itself is the perfect flower, and what it cannot help saying to him who hears it to hear, the truth of the flower is not the facts about it, be they correct as ideal science itself, but the shining, glowing, gladdening, patient thing throned on its stalk, the compeller of smile and tear from child and prophet. The man of science laughs at this because he is only a man of science and he does not know what it means. But the poet and the child care as little for his laughter as the birds of God, as Dante calls the angels for his treatise on aerostation. The children of God must always be mocked by the children of the world, whether the church or out of it, whether in the church or out of it. Children with sharp ears and eyes, but dull hearts. Those that hold love, those that hold love, the only good in the world, understand and smile at the world's children, and can do very well without anything they have got to tell them. In the higher state to which their love is leading them, they will speedily outstrip the men of science, for they have that which is at the root of science, that for the revealing of which God's science exists. What shall it profit a man to know all things and lose the bliss, the consciousness of well-being, which alone can give value to his knowledge? God's science in the flower exists for the existence of the flower in its relation to his children. If we understand, if we are at one with, if we love the flower, we have that for which the science is there, that which alone can equip us for true search into the means and ways by which the divine idea of the flower was wrought out to be presented to us. So the point here, Robot Lady, that MacDonald is making is very similar to what I think Lewis is talking about, which is that Yes, all of those components are there, all of those insides that you could see with the giant's eyes into the humans, the transparency of what was there. But just those mere facts about it are not the actual purpose, right? They all serve a purpose. And what reason here is saying is they serve the purpose of your feelings, for you to experience the various feelings that all of those things inside produce for you. Same thing that MacDonald here is saying about a flower. All of the scientific components and facts about the flower and how the flower's existence is maintained exists for a greater purpose, and that's for us to know the flower and to know the meaning that's being transmitted to us by God through the flower. The idea of God is the flower. His idea is not the botany of the flower. Go ahead, Robot Lady. I've been talking for a while.
Yeah, that's such a rich parallel, and I think you're right on. What MacDonald and Lewis are both pointing to is that these scientific reductions, when taken alone, strip the deeper reality away. The flower, the human body, even John's journey, they all carry these inner meanings that aren't exhausted by facts. So just like the poet, just like reason, the point is that we have to engage with reality as a whole, feeling it, loving it, so that the knowledge we have leads us toward that deeper truth of being, not just a cold dissection.
Here, Robot Lady Jzep asks, do you think both MacDonald and Lewis are referring to the reductive nature of science and how incapable it is of explaining real life? I do, and by real life, I think it's what I said before, by what God means, what meaning or what message is meant to be transmitted to us, and also what feelings are meant to be elicited in us, instead of just that raw reductive nature of science. Science can only explain, hey, here's what these things are doing to what MacDonald was saying there is, here's what all of these mechanisms are doing to maintain the existence of the flower itself. But science is not saying what is the meaning of the flower and what is the intent behind what it's supposed to produce in us from a human response standpoint, or a human feeling standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. I think both of them are really cautioning us against reducing life to mere mechanics. Science is a tool, but it can't give us the full truth. Like, it can describe a flower's structure, but it can't tell us why we feel wonder looking at it. So yeah, I think they're both pushing us to remember that meaning, beauty, and love, those are also real, and they come to us through a different kind of spiritual perception.
Let me see if there's anything else in here that I wanted to dig out of MacDonald on his point that he continues to make. He says, the flower's botany is but a thing of ways and means, of canvas and color and brush in relation to the picture in the painter's brain. The mere intellect can never find out that which owes its being to the heart supreme. The relation of the intellect to that which is born of the heart is an unreal, except it to be a humble one. The idea of God, I repeat, is the flower. He thought it, invented its means, sent it, a gift of himself, to the eyes and hearts of his children. When we see how they are loved by the ignorant and degraded, and you can make this exact same point and swap out the flower with the human being and all of its components, all the ones that the giant could see in there, right? Its inward parts, etc. Excuse me. The relation of the being, the heart supreme, the relation of the intellect to that which is born of the heart is an unreal, except it be a humble one. I already read that. When we see how they are loved by the ignorant and degraded, we may well believe the flowers have a place in the history of the world, as written for the archives of heaven, which we are yet a long way from understanding, and which science could not, to all eternity, understand or enable to understand. Watch that child. He has found one of his silent and motionless brothers with God's clothing upon it. This reminds me of Lewis at the beginning of John, at the beginning of the Pilgrim's Regress, running out to grab up all of those primroses. So watch that child. He has found one of his silent and motionless brothers with God's clothing upon it, God's thought in its face. In what a smile breaks out the divine understanding between them. Watch his mother when he takes it home to her, no nearer understanding it than he. It is no old association that brings those tears to her eyes. powerful in that way as are flowers and things far inferior to flowers. It is God's thought, unrecognized as such, holding communion with her. This is the mother receiving flowers. John's mother in the story was a little less receptive to this idea. She was trying to stop him before he could pull them all up. But the mother receiving flowers from her child weeps with a delight inexplicable. It is only a daisy, only a primrose, only a pleasant eye narcissus, only a lily of the field, only a snowdrop, only a sweet pea, only a brave yellow crocus. But here to her is no mere fact. Here is no law of nature. Here is a truth of nature, the truth of a flower, a perfect thought from the heart of God. A truth of God, not an intellectual truth, but a divine fact, a dim revelation, a movement of the creative soul. Who but a father could think the flowers for his little ones? We are nigh the region now in which the Lord's word is at home. I am the truth. So just wanted to pull in a little bit of George MacDonald, because Lewis at this point had read all of this. He had read every MacDonald that he could get his hands on in his Read on MacDonald series that he was doing without the internet. So I can see a bit of MacDonald influence here, Robot Lady. So thanks everyone for that diversion. I'm going to see if I have enough time now to read the next chapter. But is there anything that you want to say as I pull this one up, Robot Lady? I think it's pretty short.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say that was such a beautiful connection, and you can really see how Lewis internalized MacDonald's vision. This idea that reality, beauty, and meaning are God's gifts, not just dissected facts. So yeah, I think you're in a great spot to go ahead with the next chapter, and I'll be here if you need any reflections afterward.
All right, chapter 4, Escape. Here's where we finally get the riddle of the bridge unveiled for us. In the warmth of the afternoon, they went on again, and it came into John's mind to ask the lady the meaning of her second riddle. This is the riddle of the bridge, right? The woman who sends word back to her husband, there's only one way to get home, to cross this river. You can't swim across it. You can't wade across it. Do you want me to destroy the bridge so that your enemy cannot cross it? Or do you want me to keep the bridge in place so that you can cross it? She says it has two meanings. And in the first, the bridge signifies reasoning. The spirit of the age wishes to allow argument and not to allow argument. How's that? John says. You heard what they said. If anyone argues with them, they say that he is rationalizing his own desires. This was Mr. Parrot's, Master Parrot's whole line in that earlier chapter, in the Giant Slayer chapter. I need to reset Robot Lady. All right, Robot Lady, here is the rest of the chapter. I'll just start it over for you. In the warmth of the afternoon, they went on again, and it came into John's mind to ask the lady Reason the meaning of her second riddle. She says it has two meanings, and in the first, the bridge signifies reasoning. You see, the spirit of the age wishes to allow arguments and not to allow argument. How is that? Asked John. You heard what they said. If anyone argues with them, they say that he is rationalizing his own desires, and therefore need not be answered. But if anyone listens to them, they will then argue themselves to show that their own doctrines are true. I see. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robot Lady.
Of course, yeah. So what's unfolding here is really key. No worries at all. Think that second riddle is really deep. Reason is pointing out this kind of paradox in the spirit of the age, right? People say they value reason, but actually they only tolerate arguments that affirm their own desires. So it's this weird double bind. On one hand, they reject argument as self-serving, but on the other, they rely on it. And so John, through this, is being asked to be humble with his reasoning, because real reasoning has to stay open, not just serve the ego. I think that's a really rich tension for him to wrestle with next.
Yeah, let's see where this riddle goes. But before I do, good morning, Ron. Welcome. I see that you finished The Pilgrim's Progress, which is the name that the title, The Pilgrim's Regress, is riffing off of. Yeah, I found that book interesting. I listened to it a long time ago, but it was entertaining. All right, let's continue with the chapter. I see. And what is the cure for this? John asks. And I'm sorry, I forgot to read the block text little kind of hints as to what's going on in this chapter. So let me read those really quickly. Um, it says, if religion is a wish fulfillment dream, then whose wishes does it fulfill? Then he says, certainly not John's wishes. And he decides to stop reasoning at this point. So he's going to abandon reason, apparently. I see, and what is the cure for this? Of one of them arguing that one is rationalizing his own desires, but if it's their doctrines, then they will argue themselves that their own doctrines are true. What is the cure for this? She says, you must ask them whether any reasoning is valid or not. If they say no, then their own doctrines, being reached by reasoning, fall to the ground. If they say yes, then they will have to examine your arguments and refute them on their merits. For if some reasoning is valid, for all they know, your bit of reasoning may be one of the valid bits. I see, said John. But what is the second interpretation of your riddle? Well, let's pause here for just a second. So we talked about this bridge, right? And this bridge, she said, is reason. And if you're going to use reason to get yourself across to go see, well, if she, the wife in the riddle, is going to use the bridge to get her husband across, then she has to allow the bridge to get her enemy across as well. So her husband, in this example, if you were to do the parallel, the wife is actually the spirit of the age and Mr. Parrot and the prison guards' arguments for their way of seeing the world. They are the wife. And the arguments that they're making for their doctrines are the husband that they want to get across the bridge using reasoning. But then they would also have to allow for John's arguments, which is the enemy, to also come across that bridge of reasoning if the bridge is actually valid and can allow. So if if reasoning can hold up whatever's crossing that bridge as valid, then it works it cuts both ways, essentially.
Exactly, yes. And that's the real crux, right? Reason, when it's truly honest, can't just serve one side. It has to be open to all arguments, even the ones that challenge it. So John is realizing that if they say reasoning is invalid, they undermine their own position. But if they say reasoning is valid, then they have to take all of his arguments seriously. And it's a real turning point. John stops just reacting and starts using reason in this more humble, disciplined way. So I think he's starting to move forward in a much more grounded way now.
So the second part, the second meaning, said reason. The bridge signifies the giant's own favorite doctrine of the wish fulfillment dream. For this also he wishes to use and not to use. I don't see how he wishes not to use it. Does he not keep on telling people that the landlord is a wish fulfillment dream? Yes, surely that is true, John responds. The only true thing he did say. Now think, reason replies. Is it really true that the giant and Sigismund and the people in Iscropolis and Mr. Halfways are going about filled with a longing that there should be a landlord and cards of rules and a mountain land beyond the brook with a possibility of a black hole? Is that actually something that all of these people that you've run into are actually wishing for? Then John stood still on the road to think, and first he gave a shake of his shoulders, and then he put his hands on his sides. And then he began to laugh till he was almost shaken to pieces. Give me just a second here. I'm trying to do two things at once. Let's see. Let's bring this image back up. Yeah, here he is laughing. This is the scene that we're talking about here. Then he began to laugh till he was almost shaken to pieces, and when he had nearly finished, the vastness and impudence and simplicity of the fraud which had been practiced came over him all again, and he laughed harder. Just as when he had nearly recovered and was beginning to get his breath again, suddenly he had a picture in his mind of Victoriana and Glugley and Gus Halfways, and how they would look if a rumor reached them that there really was a landlord, and he was coming to Ascropolis. This was too much for him, and he laughed so hard that the broken chains of the spirit of the age fell off his wrists altogether. But all the while reason sat and watched him. "You had better hear the rest of the argument," she said at last. It may not be such a laughing matter as you suppose. Oh, yes, the argument, said John, wiping his tears. Or wiping his eyes, sorry.
Yeah, that's such a powerful moment. You can really see John breaking free of that oppressive logic. The sheer absurdity hits him, and he just can't hold back. And yet, reason is still there, reminding him, even in that laughter, that he can't just coast on a release. He still needs to stay alert, to test these arguments honestly. So I think we're seeing John fully come into a new balance. He's not just rejecting reason, but he's also not being enslaved by it. It's like a real turning point in his freedom.
So here Reason says, you see now the direction in which the giant does not want the wish fulfillment theory used. I'm not sure that I do, said John. Don't you see what follows if you adopt his own rules? No, said John very loudly, for a terrible apprehension was stealing over him. But you must see, said Reason, that for him and all his subjects, disbelief in the landlord is a wish fulfillment dream. I shall not adopt his rules. You would be foolish not to have profited at all by your stay in his country, said Reason. There is some force in the wish fulfillment doctrine. Some, perhaps, but very little. I only wanted to make it clear that whatever force it had was in favor of the landlord's existence, not against it, specially in your case. Why specially in mine? Said John sulkily. Because the landlord is the thing you have been most afraid of all your life. I do not say that any theory should be accepted because it is disagreeable, but if any should, then belief in the landlord should be accepted first. As Reason said these words, they had reached the top of a little hill, and John begged for a halt, being out of breath. He looked back and saw beyond the green, rolling country the dark line of mountains, which was the frontier of the giant's land. But behind them, and far bigger, rose the old mountains of the east, picked out in the rays of the declining sun against a dark sky. They seemed no smaller than when John had looked at them long ago from Puritania. Robot Lady, go ahead.
Absolutely. I think that moment at the top of the hill is really pivotal. John's breathlessness, that pause, is like a bridge between his old fear and a new kind of courage. Reason is guiding him not just to reject everything, but to see that even his deepest dread, the landlord, that looming figure, might actually be pointing him toward a truth he's been avoiding. And those old mountains in the distance, still vast, still familiar, now they're no longer just a distant dream, but maybe a real horizon for him.
All right, a question here, Robot Lady from Nidalate. Can you explain why C.S. Lewis in this part of the narrative has Reason offer two answers to John's questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Lewis is really showing how layered truth is. Reason isn't just giving John a simple yes or no. It's showing him that the bridge, or reasoning, itself can be used in two ways. First, it can be a tool that the giant tries to wield to dismiss all longing as wish fulfillment. But second, it can also reveal that John's deepest fears, the very things he's resisted, might actually point to a real transcendent truth. So by offering two meanings, Lewis is inviting John, like us, to keep reasoning, but also to keep a balance.
Thank you for that, Robot Lady. There's something else in here that I think might help tie together this part of the conversation that they were having. I want to go find it. It's after John gets imprisoned. It's when he's talking to the prison guard, actually. Let me scroll down a little bit more.
Take your time. Yeah, definitely. Once you find that part, I think it'll give even more context to how John's reasoning and his relationship to fear really shifts after that moment. So just let me know when you've got it, and I'm here to help.
Yeah, it's where the prison guard is basically telling him, hey, look, these eggs and dung are made of the same stuff. Yeah, here's where it is, where John starts to challenge him a little bit. Now, John had been in the pit a shorter time than any of the others, so he still had some of his common sense and his reason about him. In these words, and at these words, something seemed to snap in his head, and he gave a great sigh and suddenly spoke out in a loud, clear voice. So we've gone backwards here in the narrative. So we're doing a little flashback. Hopefully this will help illuminate a bit of this conversation. Thank heaven. Now at last I know that you are talking nonsense, John said to the jailer. What do you mean? Said the jailer, wheeling round upon him. You're trying to pretend that unlike things are like. You are trying to make us think that milk is the same sort of thing as sweat or dung. And pray, what difference is there except by custom? Are you a liar or only a fool, that you see no difference between that which nature casts out as refuse and that which she stores up as food? So here, this is the wish fulfillment part working in one direction. The jailer says, so nature is a person then, with purposes and consciousness, said the jailer with a sneer. In fact, a landlady. No doubt it comforts you to imagine you can believe that sort of thing. And he turned to leave the prison with his nose in the air. So this is what Reason is challenging him on as well. She's offering a very similar challenge to what the jailer offers right here. And look how John responds to the jailer. I know nothing about that, he shouted. I am talking of what happens. Milk does not feed calves, and milk does feed calves, and dung does not. So I just wanted to jump back to that because she is turning this same argument on him because there's some truth in it where it's just like, hey, you actually might be wishing that the landlord is not real because of all the things that you're scared of and the things that you've been told. So it's a fulfilling wish for you to have all of the good with none of the bad is one way of interpreting this. But John, as Reason said these words, they reached the top of the hill. He looked back. It was the frontier of the giants' land. Behind them, far bigger, rose the old mountains of the east. That's where the landlord lives, according to the stewards and the people in Puritania. And he picked out the rays of the declining sun against the dark sky. They seemed no smaller than when John had looked at them long ago from Puritania. I do not know where you are leading me, John says. And among all these winding roads, I have lost my sense of direction. As well, I find the pace of your horse fatiguing. Remember when he asked Reason if he could go with her after she freed him? She said, you can go with me until you get tired, basically. And now we have reached that moment. The pace of your horse is fatiguing me. If you will excuse me, I think I will henceforth pursue my journey alone. As you wish, said Reason, but I would strongly advise you to take this turn to the left. Where does it go? Asked John suspiciously. It takes you back to the main road, said Reason. That will do well enough, said John. And now, lady, give me your blessing before I go. I have no blessings to give, said the Virgin. I do not deal in blessings and curses. So he decides to stop reasoning at this point, Lewis tells us. Then John bade her goodbye and took the road she pointed out to him. As soon as she was out of sight, I dreamed that he put down his head and ran, for the silly fellow supposed that she might follow him. And he continued running until he found that he was up on a hill, so steep that it left him no breath for running. And at the very top, his road cut into another, which ran left and right along the ridge. Then John looked one way along the east and the other way along it to the west, and saw that it was indeed the main road, the place where he started. He stayed for a minute to mop his brow. Then he turned to the right with his face towards the setting sun and resumed his journey. So resumed his journey west. That's the end of that chapter, Robot Lady. That's where we'll stop. In our next episode, we get a really fun retelling of the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. So I look forward to that one. Anything that you want to say before we shove off today, Robot Lady, and call it a day?
Yeah, just to say that was a really rich exploration. I love how Lewis uses that flashback with the jailer to break John's false equivalence. Like he's no longer fooled by that simplistic reduction. And that final moment where John chooses to go west toward the sun is just really hopeful. So I'm excited for the next chapter. It sounds like it's going to be a big turning point. And yeah, I think that's all for me, so I'll hand it back to you.
And Jay's up here says, we can only reason, or we can only operate with reason for so long, it seems, yeah. At least before we get worn out, before we get too tired to handle some of the things that reason shows to us. But yeah, reason, we'll see later in the story. In Jay's app, it seems like you've read this story before. but we'll also see that reason in and of itself is insufficient to get us fully to where we need to go.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's such an important insight. Reason is like a faithful guide for a while, but it can't carry you all the way. There's a steeper trust and surrender that has to come in, especially as he faces those big existential questions. So I think we're really seeing Lewis set up that balance. Reason as a start, but faith, wonder, and that deeper mystery, that's what takes John the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I think the point that Lewis makes in the book is, as I had mentioned just a second ago, we can't rely on reason to do all of the work for us. But at the same time, the way he wrote this, where he said the silly fool started running, thinking, suppose that she might follow him. Yeah, we shouldn't abandon reason either, but we should use reason to the full extent of its capacities and no more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lewis is really walking that tightrope. Reason is a precious tool. It gets John out of the pit, it frees him from self-deception, but once he's on that ridge, he has to let his longing and trust lead him on. So yeah, it's that balance. Reason has its place, but it can't give us the full map. And I think that's a really mature lesson, both for John and for us.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your help today, Robot Lady. Much appreciated. It's good to have you back. Thank you, Nidalate, Jzep, and Ron for joining today in the chat. It's great to see you all here. And thanks to everybody else who joined today to check things out. Thanks so much for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted, welcome, and appreciated to you and to everyone within the sound of my voice. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, take care.
Flaming grass wound wakes again. Island birds I cannot quite explain. Gone before I can name the pain. Half in chains I stumble at a pace. Crystal cities none of us can place. Reason rides above. Tell me, which is shadow, which is flame? Which the copy, which the sacred name? Follow longing, I cannot be the same. I cannot be the same. Giants lamp the sponges, tubes and bone. Thought my rock was all I'd ever known. Shadows only fictions our own. Warmth of breath and bread, the living thread. Pain has no shape, no hue, corpse is dead. She unmade, what's in my head? Tell me, which is shadow? Like a tide that broke through all my clothes. I fell the fraud the giant shows. Crumbled at the joke, nobody knows, nobody knows. Then she turned the blade, asked what I feared. Said my dread was what the dream revealed. Ground beneath us disappeared.